Welcome back to Long Walk Talks Lost. This is your pilot speaking. My name is David Hensley. I'm the owner and creative director of Long Walk Productions, and I am joined today along with my two co-pilots,
Cara Hayes,
Robert Bravard,
who are not looking at me right now because the first time we tried this, they looked at me at the exact same time and completely threw me off. So that's our second attempt at starting this episode. Guys, how are we doing today?
Great.
Really good.
Good. We are continuing our 20-year Lost retrospective, which makes me feel older every time I say it. And we are getting very close to the end of season 1. We're doing another 4-episode run today, episodes 19 through 22 of season 1. So that's episode 19, Deus Ex Machina, which is a John Locke episode. Episode 20, Do No Harm, which is a Jack episode. 21, which is a... completely just lost my mind there, or lost my train of thought there. The Greater Good.
The greater good. That's what I was signaling Cara for just
Okay, okay. I saw that signal and I was like, oh God, what's happening?
It's ingrained in me now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the Saeed episode. And I was already just not looking forward to episode 22, Born to Run, which is another Kate episode, you guys.
Hey.
Yeah, let's not get ahead of ourselves. So we're going to start with season 1, episode 19, Deus Ex Machina.
Can I note this is the first batch of episodes we have where all of them are centered around characters who have previously had flashbacks. There are no new flashback characters for the first time since we started.
And I don't think that there's any eye-openings.
There weren't?
No.
I checked just because I wasn't sure, but no.
Eye-opening openings. Yeah, like I said, episode 19, this is a John Locke episode, takes place over days 39 through 41. So we've got another mini skip here. The previous day was 36. I have no idea how the people on Lostpedia are calculating these days, what the evidence was for a 2-day time skip, but I'm taking their word for it because the website is just so fucking comprehensive.
There have to be some places where they couldn't tell at the time, but eventually in like season 3, someone will be like, well, Jack, it's now, October 28th or whatever, and then they can work backwards from there.
Yeah, that's a good point. This episode starts with John Locke working in a toy store, which we've already seen him working in a box factory.
Very embarrassingly for Locke, one of the stuffed animals appears to have landed on his head.
I love the lengths that they go to make some of these guys look younger. We're going to get a really bad... Somebody on Reddit posted a screenshot of Jack from the opening of season 2, that flashback episode, and the wig that they put Matthew Fox in. Oh, their wig department needs help. This is something that Katie hates. She brings up a bad wig every single time.
I'm just sad we never got like anybody with just a cartoonish mustache at one point, and it's never addressed, but just like we see that Sawyer had just a really big handlebar mustache for just a period and then shaved it off and never talked about it again.
I would love that. Right. Sawyer with a big mustache. Sign me up. Sequel series.
Listen,
again.
as long as it doesn't look like that caterpillar that died on Vince McMahon's face.
So we start off with a classic metaphor here as John demonstrates the game Mousetrap for a young boy. Surely that's not a setup for anything.
I will say, I like that they immediately pay it off by cutting to him and Boone having actually constructed a trebuchet to try to break through the hatch. And then that kind of makes us think, okay, that's out of the way, not realizing that the whole thing is actually setting up the con man angle with his father.
Yeah. Kind of a clunky metaphor, but you know what? I'll take it. This is not a show that's known for its subtlety. And then we get a mention of Locke and Boone having come to this hatch every day for the last 2 weeks. I wrote this down because I meant to take time today to figure out, we need to look back at the episodes and figure out, has it actually been 2 weeks? Because it seemed like a lot more than that.
Let me see. So the episode of where where Claire got abducted, so that would have been the day 16. So because that was when they first found the hatch. Mm-hmm. So 2 weeks after that would be day 30. So no.
Oh, we're way past that then. That's now been at least 3 weeks.
Yeah.
whatever. It's either bad writing or Boone's just an idiot, or both.
Agreed.
He's been smearing the head paste on, so maybe there are a couple of days he's lost in there.
Lost.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in very short order, we are introduced. It's an ongoing discussion on this show, the Bad Dad Watch, and we are introduced to the mother of all bad dads, the bad dad of the entire show, Mr. Anthony Cooper.
Such a bad dad, he actually bad dadified someone else's dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This man is responsible for ruining 2 lives of characters on this show. And it's going to be a while before we find out about Sawyer's. But if you don't remember, listeners, Anthony Cooper is the original Sawyer as well. He is the man that Sawyer took his con man alias from.
Which was a fan theory from pretty early on. The idea that he'd... I think I forget when we meet him again to clarify that he has done this kind of thing before versus him just being a selfish guy who came up with this one idea one time. But once it was confirmed that he had a background in that, yeah, fans were pretty quickly like, that would be an interesting connection. He's about the right age.
Nice. I had no idea because, like I've told you guys before, and I've told the listeners as well, I just marathoned these first couple of seasons. So the fact that Anthony Cooper was also the original Sawyer was a huge surprise for me. And I wonder if they had it planned out this far in advance or not. That's always the big question on this show because so many times the answer is no. They were flying by the seat of their pants. So Mr. Anthony Cooper set up this elaborate mousetrap to get his son into his life and endear himself to John so that when John accidentally found him getting dialysis, he would totally volunteer on his own free will to give Anthony Cooper his kidney.
Accidentally caught him.
Organ donors, the biggest suckers on the planet.
Yeah.
I know.
Did it strike anyone else as funny that Cooper is up and out of bed and already home, and he's at least got 20, maybe 30 years on Locke? He is up and out of bed and back home before Locke is even wakes up after the surgery.
Well, I mean, obviously he has some superhuman recovery because the day he got dialysis, he went shooting. And having known people who have been on dialysis, you're not doing that. You're just not. Especially not at his age.
Yeah.
I can see that just being part of his plan, which is literally as soon as the surgery's done and I can be moved, just put me in a car and get me home because I don't want to deal with that when I wake up.
Yeah. What am I going to do if my dumbass son wakes up and realizes he's been conned before I can get out of here?
Wait a minute. This is that old urban legend where somebody steals your kidney.
Why didn't he? I mean, was that could have been plan B? If John doesn't initially go with it, then just knock him out and throw him in the bathtub.
I mean, yeah.
Now, how is Cooper going to get the kidney implanted into him? He can worry about that later.
He's rich enough he can find a surgeon somewhere.
Exactly.
On the black market or whatever.
There are some lines in this episode that are so on the nose and so clunky from Anthony Cooper. Like when John shoots one of the birds and Cooper looks at him and says, "Good job, son."
Oh, God.
And I think all three of us visibly cringed.
And I think he follows it up with, "I'm just so glad we got to know each other, John, while there's still time left."
Oh,
and then manages not to also go, "Ow, my kidney."
Right.
Yeah.
I know that the goal here was to see how naive and easily manipulated John can be and how he desperately wants to put his faith in something or someone. But this episode really just made John seem like a fucking idiot.
There is kind of the challenge of committing to the idea that they've established already that this guy had a really sad life before he was on the island, not just in terms of tragedy happening to him, but this long train of just wanting to believe that he was special, that he had a destiny, that there was something great that he was made for, and everything up to the moment that he woke up on that beach just being a reminder that, no, it's not like that. The universe is indifferent to you. Mm-hmm. And I will say, I think Terry O'Quinn does a nice job of playing a certain boyishness to Locke that doesn't make him seem like, because he's got to be at least in his, I would say, 30s, maybe early 40s in the flashback era. He seems younger, but not quite as childish in a way that I think makes it sell. Just like the eagerness he has when he builds that, he thinks he's building that relationship with his dad. And to his credit, he does also see through the immaculate conception thing that his mother gives him first.
Yeah, now, Swoozie Kurtz as his mother, not quite as good of a con artist as Anthony Cooper, it would appear.
Also kind of a shaky theologian, because the immaculate conception doesn't actually refer to the virgin birth. That's not what that doctrine is.
What?
Right.
So what?
What?
Oh, yeah, the immaculate conception is a Catholic thing stating that Mary was conceived without original sin. So it's how she was conceived, and then the virgin birth is a separate doctrine. Again, I don't really hold that against the show, because that's, a lot of people don't know that distinction. And also,
Obviously,
Cooper made that up for her to pique Locke's interest. So I view it as a flaw of the character, not a flaw of the writing.
well, we're going to have to talk offline. I need an education.
Here's the thing. I knew that that wasn't what the Immaculate Conception referred to, and yet couldn't remember what it actually referred to. So thanks for the refresher, Robert. I appreciate that. So on Island, Locke is mysteriously starting to lose the use of his legs, which he regained when he got to the island, which was kind of a big deal. So at one point, as Boone is helping him get along, when they're hunting for the Beechcraft, after Locke's vision of it crashing on the island and Boone in very, very poor shape, Locke collapses. Boone suggests going to get Jack for help. And Locke tells Boone, Jack wouldn't know the first thing about what's wrong with me. Jack, the spinal surgeon, wouldn't know the first thing about what's wrong with John Locke's spine.
Well, I mean, I guess to be fair, he wouldn't, because Jack wouldn't be able to explain why he could walk on the island and he couldn't in regular life.
Yeah, like
off island. Thank
Jack
you.
could explain why he couldn't walk after his initial injury, but not why he's suddenly losing the ability. Like, Jack couldn't explain why a miracle is going away.
Yeah.
We find out in the next episode that Jack did successfully unparalyze a woman or prevent her from being paralyzed when she otherwise should have been. So I guess all Locke really needed was to have gotten Jack as his doctor instead.
Well, and we see that in the Flash Sideways in season 6 was just, what if the two of them had crossed paths in a different context in a different world, and the show plays that off.
Yeah.
I can't I can't wait for these Flash Sideways because I don't remember most of them.
I don't
can't
either.
Wait.
I remember the build up to it being so huge and week to week being like, what do the Flash Sideways mean? How does it relate? And now at this point, 14 years later, I do not fucking remember. But shortly after this, we do get a really sad moment that stood out to me, because while Boone is trying to help Locke up after they find where the Beechcraft crashed, Locke says something to him. I didn't write the exact line down, but it's along the lines of, help me up, son. And the way we give Ian Somerhalder a lot of shit on this show, but the way he plays his reaction to that line is so good, because it makes you realize, holy shit, all poor Boone needed was a dad. And here we see that Locke could have been that for him if he wasn't kind of accidentally doing the exact same thing his own father did to him.
Without the malicious intent, but he is manipulating Boone into doing things that Locke can't do for himself, and it's going to go very badly for him.
Yep. And very similarly, because Boone falls inside the Beechcraft and injures himself, and we find out much later Locke fell out of a window and injured himself. It's just a very sad moment, especially knowing what we find out about him and Shannon's history and how both of their parents are divorced. Boone's mother married her father. It's all just very sad, and I was very surprised by how well Ian Somerhalder played that moment. because I can't really say that anything Boone's done has really struck me as memorable prior to this moment. So this is also the episode where we find out that Sawyer is farsighted, and it's the B plot of the episode that Jack and Kate get to spend their runtime fucking with Sawyer.
Yeah, Jack probably knows what the problem is within like 3 minutes of talking to him, but gives him the medical questionnaire about his sexual history and the number of STDs he's contracted.
Mm-hmm. Directly in front of Kate, which is the best part.
Oh, yeah.
This is how we, as an audience, find out alongside Jack and Kate that Sawyer's been banging prostitutes.
At least once.
At least once, and has at least one STI. All so that Sawyer can get a pair of glasses, a pair of reading glasses.
But not just any pair. Apparently had to Frankenstein together.
Yeah. Saeed like saws 2 glasses in half and like molds them together with hot plastic.
Yep. Saeed's one and only appearance in the episode. He doesn't even get a speaking line. So that Sawyer can get these glasses that he's going to lose at the end of the season and then are never going to get mentioned ever again.
Well, I know him wearing glasses is a regular thing because I remember when he's in character as LaFleur in season 5, he does wear glasses regularly. So I do think him needing them is brought back. It's just not as regular.
Yeah, I really feel like they just sort of forgot about that for 3 seasons.
I wonder if Josh Holloway was just like, I don't want to wear those again. I'm not going to mention it if they don't remember.
Probably, yeah. Robert, you brought something up that I put down here in the notes. The shots of him getting up when he's going to rescue Boone as compared to the shots of him getting up in the pilot. Did you have a chance to compare those two?
Not side by side, but yeah, just the way it's specifically framed in there of him kind of rolling over to get his hands underneath him, pushing himself back up with the camera really close in on his right side. I don't know. I don't think it was shot for shot, but it definitely feels very similar to the moment at the end of Walkabout where we actually see Locke standing up and understand what's just happened to him for the first time. And I think we see that again as he's trying to stand up to get to Boone on the plane.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's another one of those things that this is the problem. Like when we record so quickly after watching, is I did not have time to go back and look into these things that I took notes about.
Yeah, we're recording the afternoon after watching the episodes, and normally there's at least a couple of days in between.
Yeah, normally there's time to watch all of them twice, and this batch I've only watched once, unfortunately. Robert, you also made mention or you emphasized Locke's line where he says, "I don't understand." Is this when he's like pounding on the?
I think it's when it's when Boone finds the statues of the Virgin Mary, which again, Immaculate Conception, nice little call forward, and reveals that they're just filled with drugs, and that's the whole reason the plane is there. And Locke is like looking over them in the wreckage and just saying, I don't understand, because he was so convinced that this plane was the key to what the island wanted him to know. And as we're going to find out way down the road when John Locke eventually dies, the last thought to go through his mind will be, I don't understand. And as the person speaking points out, that's probably the saddest thing you ever heard.
Yeah, just continuing the tragedy of John Locke.
I really love I've mentioned this before, but the fact that Locke is correct about the island. He's correct that there are magical things happening, that there is a purpose to it all. And there are times when that's something that makes him feel like he's finally living his destiny. But there are also so many times where that's just a destructive thing, because for everybody else, if they have a plan that doesn't work or a setback on the island, that's just the way life goes. And Locke is so convinced that not only is there meaning, but he should be able to see the meaning in every moment. So it's just, for not being able to open the hatch, for the Beechcraft not having an immediate obvious connection to the next step, that's just devastating for him, because it's like that something is wrong. I'm not getting it right. The island's being weird. It's frustrating in a way that it wouldn't be for, Charlie or Saeed in that situation.
Well, before the Beechcraft ultimately flips over and takes Boone with it, he does manage to get on the radio, and we get our first appearance, even though I don't think this is his actual voice. It's just a random person that they cast. But there's somebody on the other end of that radio that that is claiming that they're the survivors of Flight 815, which, if you're not listening or if you're not watching with subtitles on, is easy to miss.
I was just going to point that out. I don't think I would have caught that if I wasn't reading it.
Mm-hmm. What's really interesting is at the time there was a debate between people who were watching it live over whether the response on the radio was, we're the survivors of Flight 815, or there were no survivors of Flight 815. And it's staticky and distorted enough that you could hear an argument for either, even if I think subtitles have finally resolved that no, it's the first one. And we do eventually hear the other side of that conversation.
Yeah, and it also is, I didn't put it in the notes, but it's good fodder for the Were They Dead All Along watch. Because we haven't gotten one of those in a minute. And we're going to get another one here very soon. But that's going to lead us into...
Before we move on to the next one, can I just say real quick, I'd forgotten that 3 of my favorite emotional payoffs in season 2 get set up in this episode, because you've got the voice on the other end of the call that we've talked about. We have a small aircraft that's smuggling drugs and is crewed by men wearing priest clothing but carrying guns. And then at the end of it, we have Locke banging on the hatch in frustration, and a light comes on inside of it. And we will eventually find out more about all 3 of those things in a really satisfying way in the next season, which... You know, for all that we talk about the show not having a long-term plan, not being sure, I do want to recognize that, okay, they definitely played this out really well.
Yeah, we do occasionally get a good payoff for these setups that they're lopping at us. But as far as like back-to-back episodes go, I don't think there has been, and there might, again, we're still rewatching this first season, so I could be very wrong about this, but I don't think there's a better back-to-back run than Deus Ex Machina and Do No Harm, because these 2 episodes really establish the differences and the conflict between Locke and Jack. It gets called out, Locke's selfishness at the events of Deus Ex Machina get called out later, and I was thinking about it and watching it because Locke really makes everything in this episode all about him, to the point where after he drops Boone off at the back at the caves, he goes back to the hatch, he's crying and pounding on it, and he's making it all about him. I did everything that you wanted, talking to the island. Why are you doing this to me? Boone's fucking dying because of what you did, Locke. Meanwhile, we move on to the next episode, Do No Harm, which is all about Jack doing everything in his power, putting himself in danger to help somebody else. I don't think there's a bigger contrast between 2 characters.
It's a great example of both of showing us what makes them... I'll use the term heroes, though I think that's a little simplistic, but of why they're these central figures in the story that we're watching. Like Locke's belief, his determination, his certainty that makes him keep going forward and pulls other people along with him. And Jack's desire to just save life, to do everything he can to protect and preserve. And also how that going too far just ultimately defeats itself. That Locke hurts the people who come along with him, that Jack is only prolonging Boone's suffering by just refusing to give up and recognize that, I mean, reality is reality. No matter how good a doctor you are, you've got limited supplies, you're in a tropical island, this kid's got massive internal trauma. He's going to die.
But damn it, Jack isn't going to beat the hell out of himself trying to save him.
At least he didn't beat on his corpse.
Yeah, no violent CPR this time.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I thought you said at least he didn't pee on his corpse.
That's for jellyfish stings.
Yes. No, you idiot. That's for jellyfish. My very first note for this episode.
I hate this.
You hate this? I'm sorry. Scott Farkas from A Christmas Story is Jack's best friend and best man in the flashback here.
I sat there for so long going, why do I know that guy's face? And I knew it couldn't be that I remembered him from this episode. Now I know why, and I just think he's ugly. Just weird looking.
Well, the actor's name is Zach Ward, and he's done a lot of different film and TV shows over the years. But yeah, I looked at that and I was like, why the fuck? I recognize that face. So I looked it up as we were watching it and went, oh my God, that's Scott Farkas. A Christmas Story was just a household staple for me growing up.
Still is in our house.
Yeah.
I'll always remember him on in the Joss Whedon show Dollhouse. He was appeared in like the future episodes Epitaph 1 and Epitaph 2 as sort of one of the protagonists of these sort of forward in time stories that kind of wrapped up the arc of the show.
Yeah. Once we get through with Lost, we should do Dollhouse. That's an underappreciated gem.
That is one I genuinely really want to go back and rewatch just because it got so beaten up at the time. And I remember being flawed, but also just going to some really interesting places.
Yeah.
I've never seen it.
Oh, it's great.
Let's do it.
But anyway, Zach Ward is playing Mark Silverman, who, as listeners and watchers might remember, is the kid that Jack got beat up for in his very first flashback. So that's a nice little callback there. And now he is the best man in Jack's wedding. We get two of these in these episodes. Sawyer Casual Racism Watch, where he refers to Jen as Kato. For any fans of the Green Hornet out there, anybody who remembers that show.
There is Sawyer's racism towards Jen and Son is basically pretty much always the all Asian people are interchangeable thing. Like he'll just refer to them as like Japanese or Chinese nicknames. And this is not, I want to emphasize, this is not a defense. This is an explanation. I can't really think, going back to 2004, what a Korean pop culture touchstone would be that Sawyer would have pulled from anyway. Again, not a defense. He could have just called them by their names, but...
Well, that's asking a lot.
I'm trying to think, like, if you wanted to nickname somebody with, like, a Korean reference, and it's like, I'm struggling to come up with one. Not a defense. Racism bad.
Thank you, Robert. Racism bad. We're going to put that on a pillow. That'll be the first, like, Long Walk Talks Lost shirt that we release. Racism bad, Robert Bradford. So this episode, the flashbacks are all about Jack's wedding to the woman that he saved from potentially being paralyzed. And as I told Robert during the episode, that is the ultimate trump card in a marriage. If Sarah were ever to be like, honey, you didn't take the trash out like I asked, Jack could easily just say, I fixed your spine. You're not paralyzed because of me.
Well, honey, why don't you walk across the room and do that? Because, you can.
Mm-hmm. And it took me a minute, but she's the mom from Modern Family.
Yeah, Julie Bowen.
She is.
Yes. And I kept looking at her and I'm like, why do I know you?
I have had a crush on Julie Bowen since roughly 2009, thanks to Modern Family.
It's a very winning performance, honestly, for a character we didn't even know Jack had been married prior to this episode. And honestly, they have good, like, familiar chemistry for the, like, having to introduce this dynamic very quickly to the audience.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is something that I don't think we're going to get confirmation for a while, but it's worth pointing out here, compounding tragedies. Inadvertently, Sarah, Jack's future wife, is the one who accidentally killed Shannon's father, Adam Rutherford. We'll find that out at the beginning of season 2, but we get the steps laid for that here. Hers was the car accident that set off the whole thing of the whole reason for Shannon going to Australia and hooking up with that dude, and then eventually hooking up with Boone and ending up on the flight that would eventually land them on the island. So you want to talk about a hell of a weird connection there. If Sarah's car hadn't flipped over that dividing line that night, the two of them probably would have lived.
And Jack also probably wouldn't have met Desmond, which he does while he's trying to deal with the stress of her case.
Yeah. So back on the island, there's a lot of jungle running happening in this episode. We're going to do a jungle run check-in. So the whole episode, we haven't even mentioned at this point what the episode's actually about, and it's Jack trying to save Boone's life. And at the beginning here, we get a great moment, a great performance from Matthew Fox, I think, where he's like taking command of the situation and barking orders at people. He has the great moment with Hurley where he tells him not to faint again.
If you faint, Hurley, I swear to God.
Yeah. And to his credit, Hurley doesn't. He's barking orders at Son, who is acting as his nurse. And he sends Kate off to get all of Sawyer's alcohol from his stash and bring it back. And on her way back, Kate takes a tumble, lands on her back. Like as she's falling, she has to do a complete 180 in order to land on the stash of alcohol and break it. So her jungle run score has gone down.
Right as a new contender arrives.
Yep. Coming onto the board is Jin, whose jungle run gets debuted and is pretty damn good. Thank you, Daniel Day Kim. You're now in contention for best jungle run. We're really going to have to remember we're going to have to come up with an actual ranking by the end of season 6.
Yeah.
The thing about Jin is it's like a football player. Like he's got his shoulders forward and his head's kind of down a little bit, and he's just like powering through everything. It's super purposeful.
Well, probably from all the people that he had to chase down on behalf of Sun's father so that he could beat the shit out of them or else they would get shot.
He also gets a great reaction shot when he comes upon Claire, because the reason we see his run is he hears Kate screaming for help because she's found Claire, who's in labor. Jin comes running in response to the screams, sees them, and gets a great little, oh, moment. Just, this is not what I thought I would come to.
And it's more of an exclamation than anything else, but I think, is that Jin's second line in English after boat?
Might be.
Think so.
If you count O as an English word, then yeah, we're now up to 2, boat and O.
Also a terrific moment when he's able to, he also says Jack Doctor when he understands what Kate is trying to tell him to do and goes to the cave, runs in and sees Sun in the same room. There's this great moment of him like, well, I still don't want to talk to you, but you're the only person who can make me understood. So they quickly get into their translation rhythm.
Yeah. Man, like Robert has pointed out, while Boone is dying, Claire is going into labor. And is there an older storytelling cliche than the juxtaposition of life and death? One person's death means another person's birth. Like, it's pretty ham-fisted. And there was some debate earlier in this show. We talked about how one of the writers had said that the whole pounding on the chest thing was a cliche and they all knew it, but they felt like they had earned it. And we all agreed at that point, no, they had not earned that. This time, I feel like they kind of have. This is a cliche that works, in my opinion. Just with the way that it's written and presented and how it pays off. Because, spoiler alert, by the end of this episode, Boone is going to be gone and little baby Turnip Head is going to be the newest addition to the island.
I just hope that Turnip Head is not the reincarnation of Boone, because, God, that kid'll be doomed.
Again, this is something we can explore on the sequel series. Boone's soul went into that child, and young Aaron is going to grow up to be the new Boone.
Oh, God.
Yeah. No, I like that, Kara. I'm glad you gave me that idea.
Okay, write it down.
That one's all on you.
Talking about heavy-handed symbolism, we also have Jack tries to find someone who's a match for Boone's blood type, but it's difficult because most people don't actually know their blood type. O positive.
Negative.
I was talking about me.
I was talking about me.
Nice. David?
I'm one of those people who would have been like, I don't know my fucking blood type.
Well, that is irresponsible.
My mother was a nurse. She has told me more than once. I could text her right now and find out what it is, but it has never stuck with me. I don't remember what my blood type is.
But what's interesting is Jack, we find out, is universal donor. He's O negative, so that literally healing people is in his veins. He's got the blood type that is more or less compatible with everybody.
Oh my God, I didn't even pick up on that.
It's also, as kind of an emphasis of Jack giving more than he gets back, O negative is the hardest one to match because every other blood type can receive its own or O negative, but O negative can only receive its own. So it's technically harder to find a compatible donor, although there are other types that are rarer. But just honestly, it's not really dwelt on, but the fact that Jack literally has the power to give life out of himself is,
Wow. I mean, that's actually really, I mean, on a deep level, I hope that they meant that. Like, they did that on purpose.
If not, they're patting themselves on the back now.
Yeah.
I think they had to be thinking, like, okay, how can we make this not just stressful for Jack and he's got a patient he's trying to save, but physically demanding on him? And, well, let's have him do a whole blood transfusion or a whole blood donation, which is a physically exhausting thing once you've done it. And, we've talked a lot about how, like, sweaty and grungy Matthew Fox looks a lot of the time. But I I gotta give some credit to the writers of this, network show. It was a big hit at this point, big ratings. They've got a handsome leading man, and they just make him look like absolute hell at every turn. Like there is no, people joke about how good all these characters look despite the harsh conditions they're in, but the number of times they make Matthew Fox just look sweaty and exhausted and like he is just dead on his feet is honestly pretty gutsy for presumably a show that is always trying to attract eyeballs.
Yeah, it's a real credit to the makeup department because in this episode and next, Jack does look like he has been through the fucking ringer. But we do get yet another payoff for, guys, remind me, the kind of fish that Jin has been catching.
Sea urchin.
Yeah, the sea urchin, because Jin is the one to point out that they can use the...
Isn't it Sun that points it out?
Sun, yes.
Yeah.
Sun points out that they can use the needle, the spine from one of those to do the blood transfusion.
I don't know how it didn't poison anybody. I mean, because
I guess they could dip it in alcohol or something to... Yeah.
Yeah.
All of the alcohol was in Kate's backpack, which got smushed. Although I don't think that keeps them from having alcohol later.
I think Jack has some... he had a bottle of specific first aid alcohol, but he was asking Kate if she could get all of the the drink card alcohol as well.
We get a number check in. When in the flashback, Sarah goes and has a talk with Jack while he's playing the piano. Does anyone know if Matthew Fox can actually play the piano or not?
I mean, that's a pretty standard song. I think that's one of the ones they teach you in any early piano lessons. So, well, they both seem reasonably competent. It could also be take a couple of days and have someone show you how to do it for this scene.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my grandma showed me when I was. I mean, she died when I was 6, so it was years before that.
I had somebody teach me how to play the piano, very little, just enough to get by for a show that I was in a couple of years ago, and literally, but marks on the keys and what order to play them in, so I could look like I knew what I was doing.
Nice.
Well, I remember when they did, I think it was La La Land, Ryan Gosling learned to play the piano specifically for the songs, and he looks super competent and capable, but admitted 2 months later he couldn't do any of it again.
Nice. But anyway, Sarah comes downstairs to talk to him, and she's wearing a T-shirt that looks like a jersey, and it's got the number 44 on the back there. So that's of the numbers 4, 8, 15, 16, 23, 42. We've got 2 4s, which add up to 8. Numerology on this show can get stupid. Cara, did this episode move the needle for you at all on poor Boone?
Yeah, I mean, I guess a little. I felt bad for him. He was trying to do something good for somebody that he thought he could trust. And, it would really suck to have a plane land on you and squash the shit out of you. And, yeah, I don't know. I did. I felt bad. And I just saw that note, just before you said it, and I was like, oh, man.
I give him some credit for being fairly calm and dignified in the face of what had to be an excruciatingly painful death. I mean, his lung collapses, he's got a broken leg, or a crushed leg, as Jack describes it, and no painkillers, I don't think.
No.
I don't think so.
Yeah, so I think it's later down in the general notes section of what I sent you guys, but I think it's worth pointing out here what the themed dinner was that we had last night before we watched these episodes. Like I said on previous episodes, now we've gotten into doing this new thing where we try to theme the food that we watch before, or the food that we eat before we watch the batch of episodes to whatever's happening. So last week, because Sawyer was hunting down a boar, we did barbecue. This week, because Boone's leg gets smashed in the crash of the Beechcraft, we had smash burgers.
And they were so good.
They were cooked by our very own Robert Bradford. Thank you for that, Robert. And as a side, we had... Why don't you explain?
Well, we had potato wedges because when Jack is recognizing that the blood pooling in Boone's leg is preventing him from surviving, he decides he's going to use one of the luggage compartment doors to chop off Boone's leg. And a dropped blade is basically a wedge tool. So we had potato wedges.
Yeah, and they were delicious. Mm-hmm. So thanks for giving us that idea, writers of this show.
we will absolutely be able to make this work for the next 5 seasons.
Oh, almost certainly. Again, anytime we want to go back to Frank Duckett's shrimp shack, I'm always down with shrimp. If we just absolutely can't come up with something. Let's talk for a second about Claire's insane baby logic. She doesn't want to push this baby out because she thinks it's going to come out of the womb hating her and know that she wanted to give it up because babies know things like that, you guys.
To be fair, she's like, 19? And obviously not that brilliant when it comes to understanding how the brain works.
In Kate's defense, I think taking Claire's weird logic and turning it around, like, okay, but you want Aaron now, and the baby is not named Aaron yet. You want this baby now. The baby will know that. There we go. I think that's probably a better thing than just pausing and be like, no, that's stupid.
Claire, you fucking idiot.
Stop saying stupid things and give birth already.
Yeah.
So what are you saying? Like, I wouldn't have been a good birth coach for Claire?
No, we're saying you'd have been the best birth coach. Sarah.
Just squeeze it out already. Jesus.
One of my favorite TV birth subplots is an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation where Commander Worf has to give birth during an emergency, and he's trained for this on the holodeck. So he's looking at his tricorder and be like, you are fully dilated to 10 centimeters. You may now give birth. It's just like the most procedural, like, all right, we have reached step 7B, so you may now. It's just the most like mechanical, like, all right, why aren't you doing, this is not as orderly as the simulation birth. Much
like the birthing robots from Revenge of the Sith in Star Wars, which I'm sure every woman would love to have assisting with their birth.
So cold.
Yeah. So we get, unfortunately, none of Jack's efforts to save Boone works. The blood transfusion won't work because it's all pooling in his leg. Ultimately, Boone does not let Jack use the door to cut off his leg because he knows he's on his way out. And he knows that Jack is upset about this, and he tells him, I know you made a promise. I'm letting you off the hook. Genuine, great delivery by Ian Somerhalder. Really tragic moment, and another iteration of I'm letting you off the hook. In last week's batch of episodes, we get Locke mentioning that he felt like the possible reincarnation, or his foster mother felt like the possible reincarnation of his sister was a way of letting her off the hook. And this is almost verbatim. It might actually be verbatim. This is another thing that I meant to go back and check, to what Rose told Jack earlier in the season when he was sitting with her on the beach. She tells him then, I know you made me promise. I'm letting you off the hook. So the third time and not the last, we get an instance of letting you off the hook right before Boone dies. Really tragic stuff. Really well played stuff, because Boone is the first main character on the show that we lose. Definitely not the last.
Nope.
We're going to lose a lot of beloved characters, and how much you love Boone is up to the eye of the beholder, I guess. Cara.
I liked him more than Shannon.
That's a very good point. We haven't talked about the Shannon of it all, but we'll get to that next episode.
She's off having a nice picnic with Saeed while this is going on.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. And then we lose Boone, but we get little baby Turnip Head, a.k.a. little baby Aaron. Really great scene. Love watching Jin and Charlie interact. They're just so overjoyed.
It was so cute.
Jin offers a congratulatory handshake to Charlie, which made me realize, for all he knows, Charlie could be that baby's father. Like, he probably has no idea what the relationship is between these two people.
Yeah, brilliant. Claire is up and walking, it seems like, really fast, because the next morning they're taking the baby back down to the beach, where we get a great shot, I think for the first time in several episodes, of all the other survivors. We maybe like get one or two in the background, but here we see all of the survivors gathered so that they can all get to meet and see little baby Aaron, including Sawyer, who just looks actually happy. Everyone's excited, and I wrote down in the notes, it takes an island. to raise a baby.
Well, this is not at all something they could have been planning at the time, but we do eventually find out that Sawyer is a dad. And I don't know that he's ever actually seen his daughter, but he knows she's out there. So while this could not have been in Josh Holloway's mind at the time, it's a sweet little call forward to that.
I do not remember that. I don't remember that Sawyer had a kid.
Clementine.
Oh, fuck me, that's right. Holy shit.
Yeah.
All right, write that one down in the notes. We need to explore little baby Clementine and what she grew up to do in the sequel show.
Oh,
Stuff
man.
that sticks with me. I don't even know what to tell y'all.
Yeah. Wow. Good call, Robert. Thank you. I did not realize that. Well, I forgot to mention that Do No Harm, this episode takes place over days 41 to 42. So now we're starting to see these episodes run together because the end of Deus Ex Machina leads directly into Do No Harm. And Do No Harm runs directly into episode 21, The Greater Good.
The greater
The
good.
greater good.
There we go. I put this is day 42, and I wrote it down in the notes just so that we could get it out of the way at the top, and then you guys got ahead of me. This is a callback to Hot Fuzz. That is a great movie, great joke. Let's just do it one more time and then not do it for the rest of the episode, all right?
Aw.
Okay.
1, 2, 3.
The greater good.
Thank you. So poor Boone is dead, guys.
Mm.
And this is a Saeed episode, so we get to find out more about his tragic backstory. And but the first thing that I wrote is during Boone's funeral,
The Booneral.
Saeed is the one to eulogize Boone after Shannon can't or won't say anything, and Jack is too fucking sleep deprived and blood deprived to offer any wise words or kind words, I should say. And after Saeed's beautiful speech, Locke shows up to take the blame for what happened, still wearing the same white shirt that is covered in Boone's blood. And I wrote down, you couldn't even change shirts, John.
I want to give him a break there because I can see him coming back immediately, and he may not have even known Boone was dead until he got to the beach and saw that happening. But later when he talks to Shannon and tries to like connect with her, yeah, at that point you could have switched it out.
Yeah.
It's hard
Or
to
just
blame.
taking it off all day. Just, go shirtless at this point.
I know how much you just want to see John Locke shirtless.
Well, we get that. We get our little...
Yes.
Yeah.
You know.
We know he has several white and beige colored shirts in his menagerie.
Hard to blame Jack for just running over, screaming, and tackling him to the ground, which...
It's so great. It is such a great moment of Jack just repeating, "Where were you?" and "You son of a bitch," tackling Locke to the ground and taking a swing at him before eventually passing out from exhaustion and blood loss. This moment struck me because I think it's a really great example of how much Sawyer has changed as a character over the course of the show. So in the last episode, he voluntarily gave up his alcohol stash to Kate with no question, no bartering. He needs it. Okay, that's an emergency. Here you go. At the end of the episode, we saw him smiling at little baby Aaron and Claire and was genuinely happy for them. And when Jack passes out here, Sawyer's the first person to call for somebody to get him water, which does not seem like something that he would have done earlier in the series. I love what they do with Sawyer, and I love how well it builds here.
We also get that carrying through to the end of the episode because I guess it's kind of the C plot is Charlie discovering that Sawyer's voice calms down Aaron or Turnip Head when he's crying. And we end the episode with Sawyer just reading from a car magazine to the baby, and there's no indication that he's asked for anything in return, that he's just doing something nice for the kid.
We do get a great moment because Charlie's trying to let Claire get some rest, and he's trying to keep the baby calm and get it to sleep. And once he realizes that Sawyer's voice calms the baby down, he sort of like chases after Sawyer.
So cute.
And we get some really great physical humor from Josh Holloway here, who is very much giving like no, stop, don't follow me, a little run away. It's just great. And I imagine after 42 days of hearing Sawyer loudly bitch and complain and make fun of people, that his voice really reached down into Claire's womb, and that is what the baby recognizes. That's just fucking hilarious to me that it's Sawyer who calms that child down and lets him get to sleep. Meanwhile, Charlie Pace should be allowed to name all of the new characters because Turnip Head is great.
Yeah.
Sawyer may have kind of the domain on nicknames, but when Charlie comes out, he comes out swinging.
Here's a controversial opinion for you, especially for you, Cara. Is this Maggie Grace's best episode? I think definitely so far. We're reaching the countdown on her now. We've got like a few episodes into season 2 before that happens, but she's genuinely really good in this episode. What did you guys think?
I agree. When we had Boone's flashback episode, I talked about a version of Shannon that seemed a lot more interesting to me, which is a little bit more of a manipulator and a little bit more of a cold, calculating figure. We get more of that than I expected. I remember that only being a thing in Boone's flashback, but the way she listens to Locke when he apologizes and gives her Boone's pack, and then just immediately walks over to Saeed and very calmly tells him, like, in so many words, I want you to kill John Locke. It's just like, oh my gosh, that's intense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I can't take anything away from her. I mean, this I do agree is probably her best episode yet. She just, I don't know, she does play that dead coldness, terrible. That coldness really, really well.
I just like wringing every compliment for Shannon out of you that I can. And I'm running out of opportunities to do that. I can't do it with Boone anymore.
No.
And I think it's going to be a minute before you encounter another character that you hate. So this is just fun for me.
Well, good. I'm glad.
Are there any other characters throughout the run of the show that you dislike as much as Boone and Shannon?
I don't even remember. I'm quite sure there are plenty that I hate for different reasons, maybe, but yeah.
Do you have strong memories of Ana Lucia?
Yeah, I wasn't a fan of hers. She's kind of annoying, but I don't think I hated her quite the same way.
We'll add a Cara hate watch to every episode. Cara, are there any particular characters that you don't care for in this episode? My last two notes about this episode, we haven't even discussed the side plot, which we can in a second here. The sound design can tend to annoy me, especially as somebody who's been on the other side of it and actually done sound design and won a very minor regional award for sound design. There's two instances here in Saeed's flashback that irrationally bothered me. The first one is when Saeed gets the gun away from, he's given Locke's gun that he found on one of the priests, the quote-unquote priests. He points it at Locke, and then out of nowhere, we get the sound of a gun cocking. The kind of pistol that Saeed is holding does not have a hammer to be cocked, and he doesn't even make any kind of gun cocking motion. It's just the sound designer just put in the sound of a gun cocking there. And then shortly after that, they use almost the exact same sound effect when Saeed takes the safety off, which he actually goes through the motion of taking the safety off of the gun, but we get the exact same sound effect of it being cocked again. And I was like, oh, come on. Who designed this?
Somebody who doesn't know a thing about guns.
I can imagine that being a TV thing that just, you want a loaded gun is a presence in a scene. Like it changes the dynamic of the characters. So you don't want it to just be a shape that's moving around. You want it to have its own little language. It clicks. The metal makes noise when it's moved, even if it's just a character holding it in their hand and moving it through the air. It's, the same reason that anytime a character picks up a knife, you hear a shing noise, even if they're picking it up off like a dishcloth or something. That just, I think that's just an unspoken rule of TV editing. Is just like the gun gets to talk when it's in the scene.
That's a good point.
That's a very good point.
But in the flashback, we see at one point Saeed's in a truck that rolls into a warehouse and comes to a stop, and we get a screeching sound from the tires.
Well, now I have heard that though. Like when I've been in some parking garages, and when you're just kind of going around a curve, or you move the tires at all from straight, they make a noise.
Maybe, yeah, I can see that. I don't think that's what we got out of this moment because, like,
I was trying.
I know the truck just slowly rolls to a halt and we get a screeching noise. I was like,
Maybe it has a loose belt.
maybe.
You can do this, Cara. I'm not going to defend any dirty terrorist truck. That truck was
okay.
no good.
Yeah,
that truck was up to all kinds of badness.
Yeah.
Like I said, we haven't even touched on the B plot of this episode. It's a Saeed flashback in which that old tricksy CIA tries to take advantage of him.
In classic CIA fashion, you need to make sure this guy goes ahead with a suicide bombing so we can get the explosives he'll use to carry out the suicide bombing. And when Saeed's like, I think I can just talk him out of doing this. No, we need him to do the suicide bombing. Mm-hmm. Which is, as I mentioned, an unfortunately common thing with undercover federal agents and informants, where they actually enable the plot so that they can arrest the person later on in the plot.
Yeah, and they also, if Saeed doesn't go along with the plot, they threaten to arrest Nadia as an enemy combatant, despite the fact that we're never given any evidence whatsoever. Like, she's on the run. But she's never actually participated in any acts of terrorism.
Well, they mentioned that she was being held in prison in Saeed's earlier flashback episode because she had associates who were like tied to bombing, to an insurgency against the Hussein regime. So I guess that would be enough of a like, you're a friend of a terrorist. So that's enough for us to. And I think we can all look back with 20 years of hindsight and say that, maybe our national security apparatus was not as scrupulous as it should have been in determining who did or didn't deserve to be locked up as an enemy combatant at the time.
Yeah. I think the CIA lady mentioned it's 7 years. She said that Saeed's been going from place to place. That's how they deduced somehow that he was looking for Nadia, which means that his previous episode took place in 1997. Just another...
That tracks.
Yeah, tidbit there. Again, I think I'm the only one who finds these little year trackings interesting.
I don't think we ever get a specific episode that covers why and when Saeed left Iraq. We know he was there during the Gulf War, and like you said, we know he was working there through at least the late 90s. And then we have some flashbacks to when he was still there, and we have some flashbacks to, what he did when he was traveling afterwards. I don't think we ever get a story that's actually when he left the Republican Guard and got out of the country.
Yeah. It's a flashback that happens. It is not as consequential to the storylines as Jack and Locke's, I feel.
It mainly just establishes why he was in Australia and gives him, like everybody else, you might not have been on the plane but for this. And in this case, they get him a flight out of Australia once he's done his job for them, but he chooses to stay an extra day because he wants to make sure that his friend, who kills himself when the operation goes sideways, is able to be buried in accordance with Muslim tradition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just another one of those twist of fates. If Jack hadn't gone to Australia to retrieve his dad's body, he wouldn't be on the island. If Hurley hadn't been tracking down the source of the numbers, he wouldn't be on the island. Yeah. It's good stuff, but ultimately it takes us through the entirety of day 42 and into the last episode that we're going to discuss, episode 22, Born to Run, a Kate episode. Yay.
I will say I like this one better than her last one.
Yeah, she's less of a fucking action hero.
Yeah.
It is strange that we've gotten 3 Kate episodes now.
Well, I guess it's not, though, because, if she was supposed to be the main person.
Yeah.
I don't like it, but...
No. Well, we've gotten... this Do No Harm made for 3 Jack episodes. So I think that Jack and Kate are tied now so far because we got 2 Locke episodes.
Yep.
Anyway, it's just so hard for me to care about Kate as this season goes on. But anyway, Robert made a good point. Let's talk for a second about Evangeline Lilly and fan service, because she was the one that ABC, it seems like, was really leaning on for the sex appeal of this show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we do see her, and her flashback starts with her pulling up to a motel, going inside, taking a shower. So we get a nice lingering shot of her taking her shirt off, and I guess back nudity is what we call it. Just
Bootity, yeah.
there we go. Which Yeah, I don't think on Island or in the present time she has anything, but it is kind of a recurring thing that almost all of her focus episodes she does have a scene where she's in some state of undress or other.
Well, when she and Sawyer went swimming, wasn't she in her bra and underwear?
Yeah, I think just down to her underwear, she at least had the forethought to take her blue jeans off, unlike Sawyer.
He's an idiot.
At one point, like Jack comes upon her when she's shirtless in the woods, just in her bra. They frequently put Evangeline Lilly in the low-rise jeans, so her underwear is peeking out over the top throughout the first season.
I hate that was a thing.
I didn't mind it.
Of course you didn't.
Anyway, and it's something that isn't as prevalent later on. In fact, I think they phase it out entirely. Like, Kate has a tendency to actually wear more clothes as the show goes on, and I think that speaks to Evangeline Lilly's star power as the show went on, to be like, guys, please stop. Please stop making me the sex symbol of the show.
It might also go somewhat to the confidence of the showrunners that, okay, we know what we have people tuning in for, and we don't need to appeal as much with this kind of thing as we did in the early days when we weren't sure that, we were putting everything on the table to just try to get as many eyes on us as possible.
I will say the first flashback of her in this episode shows more competency from Kate than we're used to getting from her criminal career, which is otherwise very shoddy and just plain bad. When she stops at the motel, she swaps out the license plate on her car from a collection that she keeps in the trunk. She watches for a family to leave from a hotel room and get in their car, and then she watches and sees that the maid is unlocking somebody's room, so she deduces the family that just left probably left theirs unlocked. So that's the room that she goes into. So she manages to be able to get herself a room and a hot shower without actually having to check into the hotel.
Which, by the way, another piece of musical punnery from Michael Giacchino. Do you know what the score is called that for the scene that, because there's no dialogue in the scene, it just plays over Kate going through all these actions. So we have a scene where her hair is dyed blonde in this moment. She goes to a motel while she's a fugitive from the law and takes a shower where we see liquid swirling the drain. So the title for the music that plays over this is Kate's Motel.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I had forgotten about that. Beautiful.
I love it.
Yeah. Yep. For any fans of Psycho out there like me. Good stuff. We get a were they dead the whole time watch check in. Another one from Charlie when he's talking to, I think it's Claire that he's talking to about, he's wondering if drive shaft sales went up after all the world thinks that he died in a catastrophic plane crash.
He's tasteful enough not to name check like Richie Valens or John Denver or any of the other
Buddy
famous
Holly,
musicians.
yeah.
Good.
Let's talk communication, because poor communication is a theme of this episode, and I feel like it's important for people out there to understand, if the opportunity ever presents itself to you, it's better if I show you is not a reasonable response. It's just not. Jack correctly, as Saeed is, the last episode ended with Saeed confronting Locke about the hatch, which they found out from a dying Boone.
I did enjoy that basically one sustained conversation with Locke is all that Saeed needs to suss out pretty much everything Locke's been hiding on the island.
Yeah.
He does not have to be an idiot. Yeah.
Yeah, that was good stuff. So Jack correctly calls them out on their bullshit as Saeed is leading him to the hatch, but hasn't told him. And Jack finally stops and he's like, all right, just tell me what's going on. And I was like, great. Thank you, Jack. But immediately after that, we get this, it's better if we show you.
Yeah, because Locke comes out to double team him with the ambiguity and be like, oh, sure, just walk right over here, Jack, and you'll see.
Yeah, I don't like it, but there's a lot of that in this episode, and it actually gets discussed in episode, which I think was fun.
But it stems from a lot of Jack's anger at Locke, and he is still clearly very upset with Locke for the fact that Locke lied about how Boone sustained his injuries. Just kind of Locke's defense being everybody has been keeping secrets on the island. Jack had a case full of guns that he didn't tell anybody about until it was time to share them.
Kate's a fugitive.
Which Hurley reveals, and Locke gets a great little, oh, really? And then turns to immediately make that point to Jack.
Steve didn't even know about the polar bear.
Poor Steve.
I love Hurley's moment where he is expresses how frustrated he is with all the secret keeping on the island, because poor guy's just stuck in the middle of all of this bullshit between all these grown-ass adults. But yeah, like there's the conversations about using your best discretion between Locke and Jack, and they make good points, but so much of the conflict on this show would have been resolved if they would just fucking talk to each other.
In the last episode, when Locke reveals that he was the one who attacked Saeed and destroyed the transceiver, Saeed asks, like, why didn't you just tell me? And Locke's response is, you wouldn't have been open to a reasoned debate. Which is funny coming from the guy who has now twice used blows to the back of the head to get around conversations that aren't going to go the way he wants them to.
Yeah, and Locke's point was that they were going into a place called the Dark Place when they knew that there were other dangerous people, and the message from the transceiver said it killed them all. So this is the point that he makes to Saeed, but the counterpoint is, why didn't you just fucking say that?
Yeah.
Why didn't you just say those words that you just said to Saeed to everybody else before you decided to whack Saeed on the back of the head and break his shit?
And of course, their places are exchanged now because Locke is the one who wants to get into the hatch, and Saeed is the one saying, "This? Are you kidding? This thing has no means of opening it from the outside. Clearly, it was not meant to be. We should not go anywhere near this thing."
And I love Saeed's disappointment when Jack reveals that he also now wants to get into it. And I told you guys when we were watching it, all of this debate and everything about the whole plot about getting into the hatch becomes much more frustrating in season 2 when we find out that just a few hundred feet in a different direction, there is an actual front door to this hatch that after that point, the characters just use to come and go. So if Locke had been a little more thorough, instead of just getting caught on, we have to figure out how to open this one particular opening that can only be opened from the inside. If they had just found the other entrance to the hatch, we might have avoided a lot of this.
Well, we could have, but at the same time, I don't know, would he necessarily have thought that there was another entrance? Maybe he thought it was like a shipping container bomb shelter where it's just straight down and it's self-contained and it's just so big. Maybe?
It's something that the writers, I think, learned a few lessons from, because introducing the hatch is such a cool thing when Boone and Locke find in the jungle, but there really is only so much you can do drama-wise around that. It's, do we open it or do we not open it? Okay, we're going to open it. How? Excuse me. And then whatever happens after that. But there's not really, you can't do a lot of stages to that drama.
No, in fact, we only get 3.
Yeah.
We get the discovery of the hatch. We get the light coming on in the hatch as Locke is having his existential crisis and pounding on it. And then we get the reveal that the numbers are written on the side of it. That's, like you said, that's pretty much all you can do with a stationary, inanimate object.
And to their credit, in season 2 and going forward, once you do get inside the hatch and you have the button being pushed, the Dharma Initiative, they are a lot smarter about, okay, there are a bunch of different trails we can follow story-wise, and not just, let's, Boone and Locke, it is said multiple times, they are just coming out and staring at it. That's all they're doing.
Yeah. And apparently they just wasted, according to Boone, several days just staring at it. Anyway, Sawyer's casual racism check-in. In this episode, he also refers to Jen as Sulu. Another Asian stereotype.
Although the funny thing is, it was not the case at the time, but because George Takei is of Japanese ancestry, but starting with the 2007 or 2009 reboot, the J.J. Abrams reboot, Sulu was actually played by a Korean, an actor of Korean ancestry in John Cho. So it would be slightly less racist if he was saying it 10 years later.
Slightly. And then after this, I just wrote down in the notes, Kate's just the worst. And I took this note before she started making out with the married man who she's recruited to help her. I don't remember what exactly the moment was that made me take that note, but it's something shitty she did in her flashback. But like Robert alluded to earlier, they do such a good job of making people on the island look sweaty and dirty and beat up that we all noticed how much more Kate is made up in the flashbacks, like a considerable amount of more makeup, specifically like beauty makeup that Evangeline Lilly is wearing here.
like visible lipstick. I'm sure, as an actor, they're putting her in makeup and lipstick for filming, but it's meant to look very natural. And then to actually see Kate is wearing lipstick that reads on television is very subtly jarring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in her flashback, she tries to go visit her mom. Apparently the cops were expecting that, so they posted some guard outside of her room, a not very observant guard. She enlists the help of her old friend Tom Brennan, the man she loved, the man she killed, as she confessed to Jack at the end of her last flashback episode.
Owner of toy airplanes.
Yes, the whole reason that plot was set into motion. He gets her into the hospital to see her mom after they drink a couple of beers and go dig up an old
Time capsule.
Time capsule. Thank you. I just
For all that can be criticized about this episode, a cool thing about the structure of Kate's flashbacks is that they are moving in a pretty linear fashion back and back further away from Oceanic Flight 815. That whereas everybody else, you've had sometimes flashbacks that span years, sometimes things that are nested inside previous time frames. With Kate, her first flashback was a couple of days before the flight, how she got arrested and was being transported. And then we jump back to maybe a year or two before that when she's in this bank robbery. And then we jump back to maybe a year or two before that where we find out what that means to her. And the idea of that as a way to untangle and take us closer and closer to the point where she becomes a fugitive in the first place is a really solid idea. And for all that the plane thing is stupid, the moment where she does get close to her mom and talks and introduces herself, it's like, "Mom, it's me, Catherine." And her mom opens her eyes, looks at her, says, "Catherine," and then her eyes go wide and she starts screaming for help, is a great beat. Like that's a great, like, oh my gosh, what did she do that her mom is so... And I don't think it pays off that well in the long run, but in the moment, it's an awesome scene for Beth Broderick, who plays Kate's mom.
yeah.
Who was, by the way, ABC royalty at this point from her Sabrina the Teenage Witch days, which was a staple of my Friday night viewing in the 90s.
Yeah, which famously starred Melissa Joan Hart. And in this episode, Kate's alias is Joan Hart, which is 8 letters long. I mentioned that because we get two more instances of the numbers here in that they recorded the cassette tape that they included inside the time capsule on August 15th, 8:15. And with the reveal that Kate's full name is Catherine, that would make her name Catherine Austin, which is 15 letters long if you don't include whatever the hell her middle name is. Was the last one intentional? Probably not, but you can never be sure when it comes to writers and numerology. Let's see, what else is there to talk about in this episode?
It's really weird that it apparently didn't occur to Kate that rescue would be complicated for her as a fugitive until she's having this conversation with, I think, Charlie, who's just like, I guess we'll be really famous for surviving a plane crash, huh? And
Yeah.
then it suddenly occurs to, oh, shoot, yeah, I should probably do something about that.
I mean, she could just stay on the island. Like, she don't have to get on me.
Yeah, but
Like, I know.
that doesn't sound like fun.
I know.
She's got many more people that she could kill,
That's true.
and banks that she could rob, and friends whose lives she could ruin.
She persuades Sun to poison her husband, convincing Sun that this is the way that she can protect Jen from being in danger out on the raft, but really so that Kate can get Jen's spot.
It's established that Tom Brennan has a wife and like a newborn child.
22 months old.
22 months old. Within a few hours of finding this out about him, she makes out with him in his car, and he appears to feel very guilty about it afterwards. She just seems disappointed that she got cock-blocked. And then later, she gets him killed by running from the police after he explicitly is like, he stays in the car with her so that he can be like, Kate, turn yourself in, do the right thing, get help. And she's like, LOL, no, fuck you, and tries to run through a police barricade and gets him shot to death. I feel like this is like the last nail in the coffin for like Kate's credibility.
It's very frustrating because there are characters on the island who are, someone like Sawyer, who is a more or less unrepentant criminal. We know he murdered someone just before getting on the flight. Like, he's a messed up guy, but because the writers show us his journey, like we've talked about, to becoming a more compassionate and open person while still having those dark flashes, it's easier for us to connect with him as an audience. The problem with Kate is anytime she's not the center of the episode, she just seems like a nice, helpful, friendly member of the island community. So her episodes are suddenly, oh yeah, she remembers that she's a ruthless person who will do things to protect herself and get ahead. So it's harder to feel like we're seeing anything, instead just being like, oh yeah, the nice person is a facade, and I guess she's just a jerk.
Well, yeah, with every other character, the more we found out about them, the more endeared we become to them. The more we find out about Kate, the more fucked up we find out she is as a person.
And not even in an interesting way, like,
No.
oh my gosh, this person might actually be a bigger villain than we realized, and more just, oh, I guess she's kind of unpleasant.
She's kind of an asshole. Yeah. I do enjoy the nested reveal here because at first you find out. Earlier in the episode, Michael accidentally ingests some poison that gives him stomach cramps and puts him out of action for like a day. You find out that the reason is, like Robert pointed out, Sun is the one who poisoned a bottle of water that was intended for Jin. Jack is the one who figures this out and confronts her about it. So initially you're like, oh shit, that's kind of a fucked up thing to do, son. And then later you find out she did it at the behest of Kate, which just makes the whole thing worse.
You also have this moment where, because Michael's inclination is to suspect Sawyer, and Sawyer turns it around by saying, all right, well, let's all talk about Kate and who she really is, because he's worked out that she was the fugitive, and he spotted her trying to falsify a passport. And everything he says about her is kind of correct, about everything she's done and everything about who she is. And again, it could be we could have empathy for that Kate, who's tried to build this persona for herself around the island and these people who didn't know her from before, and having all that ripped away and have her past thrown in her face. Except it's all the stuff she's done on the island. It's not like a conflict between who she's tried to be since the crash and who she was before. It's just, oh yeah, you've never been that nice of a person. I'm frustrated because it's just like there was so much they could have done with Kate, and the version of the show where she's the protagonist, I think this would have been this would have been a huge culmination of where she'd come, and it would have just changed the way everybody looked at her and put it in a really interesting place for the finale. And now it's just, well, everybody's kind of mad at her.
Or counterpoint, it would have run the show into the ground, because if she was your protagonist and now you find out like, wow, what an asshole you are, and not in a way that we can empathize with, I feel like that could have really ruined the show's momentum.
It could have. I just have to think if she was the protagonist, they would have been more strategic in how they doled out the nice person, mean person character moments.
True. Her harebrained plan almost inadvertently cost the boat 2 people, because it would have meant Michael not being on there, and also he kicks Sawyer off. So imagine a version of this in which it's Walt, Kate, and Jin sailing off into the sunset to try to get rescued. Yeah, I don't think that would have worked out the way that she wanted to. I feel like the only other thing of note in this episode is Walt gets to display his burgeoning powers in another creepy way when Locke touches his arm, and Walt gets some kind of flash of intuition and tells him, don't open that thing, don't open it, referring to the hatch. How do you guys feel about this moment?
Yeah.
It's great in the moment. Like it clearly they're building towards the hatch being the fulcrum of the whole finale. So to have Walt express this fear around it and then go to the beach and first confess to his dad that he burned the first raft, and then admit that, okay, but now they need to get off this island as quickly as they can. From a dramatic perspective, it's great. From a long-term, we know what's inside the hatch, it's kind of hard to be sure what he was talking about, because there is something dangerous inside the hatch, but it's dangerous whether the hatch is opened or not. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, not really clear on that. In fact, them opening it and getting to it makes it, prolongs the period before that danger erupts.
Yeah. It's very interesting in the moment. Like you said, Robert, long term, what's in the hatch? A dude. Just another setup that they couldn't really pay off because the actor playing Walt was just aging way too rapidly. Which I would just, if they had gotten a younger kid or if they had found a way to make this work, I'd love to know where this plot was supposed to go.
Yeah.
One other thing of note this episode, we get for the first time a background survivor steps forward and gets a speaking role with the introduction of Dr. Arst.
Yeah, Dr. Leslie Arst.
Yeah, I forgot about him.
Who is informing them all that they need to launch the raft ASAP because monsoon season is coming, which he does, which is a very helpful thing for him to tell everybody, but he does it in the douchiest way imaginable.
Yeah, I would not have gotten along with this guy. Going back to last episode, please don't leave me on the island with just him.
Or anyone.
But his contribution to the finale is going to be explosive, so that's really going to pay off in an explosive way. He's not just a flash in the pan.
Try as he dynamite. He's gonna make an impact.
Between now and next week, we just need to write down as many puns for Dr. Arst as we can. But anyway, that's a good way of segueing that our next episode will be the finale. The 3-part finale of season 1. And then we were discussing this last night, like how we want to structure the rest of the show going into next year. So listeners, the plan is our next episode is going to cover the season finale, Exodus parts 1, 2, and 3. And then after that, we're going to do an episode in which we discuss the season as a whole, like the highs, lows, what worked, what didn't, what we're looking forward to in the next season. And then after that, we are going to discuss, like we mentioned a few episodes ago, we're going to watch and discuss the movie Brick, starring Emily DeRavin, or featuring Emily DeRavin. And that will take us through the end of November, and then we're going to take a hiatus throughout December since the holidays are coming up. We've got Thanksgiving, we got Christmas, everyone's got vacations to go on. And then after the new year, once we get into January, we will pick back up with season 2 of Lost. And I think the plan is currently to try to discuss, get through seasons 2, 3, and 4 throughout 2025. And then finish out strong in 26 with seasons 5 and 6. But with these 22 episodes that we've now watched, guys, that means we only have 99 more to go.
Inside the final 100.
Yes.
99 episodes of Lost on the wall?
On the raft.
Yeah, the raft.
On Not Penny's boat.
Oh.
I know. Anyway, all right, so that's it for this episode. Robert, if people want to reach out to you online, if they want to follow you online, or send you ominous messages online, where can they do that at?
They can join the chorus of howling voices that I am a part of on the platform formerly known as Twitter at RedbeardRob17.
Cara, I know you're like boycotting social media, but if people did want to reach out to you or follow you, where could they do that at?
Instagram's the best place. That would be at HistoryNerd1861.
Very nice. And if you want to follow me online, the best place to do that is on Instagram as well. It is at DB Hensley. If you want to keep up with Long Walk Productions, you can visit us online at longwalk.us to see more of our original works or hear past episodes that are no longer streaming. You can follow the YouTube links in the show notes. Thank you very much for listening, and if you enjoy this show or any of the shows on the Long Walk Podcast Network, please make sure to leave us a rating and a review on whatever platform you're listening on.
The greater good.
The greater good.
The greater good.